We're in Hadley, Massachusetts. We're going to have two cemeteries together in a driving tour through both those cemeteries. They're both Catholic cemeteries. They serve 7 different communities, and these are only 2 Catholic cemeteries in them. And this is St. Brigid Cemetery first in Hadley. We're passing by the center. We have come through the entrance gates, and we're going to try to show you the layout of the cemetery. We have stops for St. Brigid Cemetery, which point out the many great details that are inside of here. It forms an H shape, so if you go up this, you see there's an entrance way up there. I won't go out there because it goes up to a busy street, but this is looking towards the very front of the cemetery. And now we'll drive towards the back and look at all the modern stone back here. Some quite modern. And it forms again an H shape on the driveway, but there's a end back here that we can travel around to our immediately right at a slight angle. You see the memorial stone for the babies that suffer through abortions. And there's one generalized stone, a walkway. Immediately behind that is a non-holy section where the babies that were never baptized are buried in there. You can't see any upright stones, but there's some stones there for the more modern burials of children. But the 1856 burials onwards may not have stones, and most of them do not. That's why this section is actually very big back there. And yet you see very little designation or inscriptions. And I covered in one of the stops Arthur Victor Petit, who died in France, and this stone was on the left. But we're going to be driving by this section up here is where the Potter's Field is. You notice it's mostly empty right there. You see that big section where it's all empty? That's where the Potter's Field, including the section behind it, including towards the fence. So there's a big Potter section with paupers' graves. But in this community, some communities, there was a fraternal group within the church that paid for the burials, but often didn't pay for any stones at all. A lot of stones that are out there are military veterans paid by military groups. And so it's a pretty decent fraternal group to keep this all going and pay for the burials. Some Catholic churches, cemeteries don't even have that. So this St. Brigid Cemetery was the only Catholic cemetery in these 7 communities of Leverett, Sunderland, Pelham, Belchtown, Amherst, Hadley, and Shrewsbury. But in 1926, they got a new one. And it's 300 yards away towards the west. You drive up the road, take a hard or a beer right, and once you turn on to this street, there's in front of you another cemetery. Okay, so this other cemetery is called the Holy Rosary Cemetery. It's a post-ethnic group cemetery, and what we're going to do is drive around this, and we're doing both at once because they pretty much serve the same communities, except this one was the Polish. So in front of you, there's the center of the cemetery. Now, you have a nice beautiful stone saying 1926. That's the year the cemetery started. The gate back there we had to pass through quickly, that has names on it of people that donated money to get the cemetery going and to improve it greatly and put this cross in. And then you see what looks like a chapel behind it. It's not a chapel, it's a mausoleum. And there's 3 people buried inside there. The Waskowitz family, Demetrio died in 1928, Victoria died in 1938, and then there's one more name on the side. So it looks like a chapel, but it's really a mausoleum. So believe it or not, Hadley has one mausoleum. And I'm going to show you the 3rd name inscribed on this side. So you see a name right there. It says Demetria Waskowitz, 1928. So she died 2 years after the cemetery even started. So we're going to keep driving around. We're going to have stops that we get out of the car, and it's going to be one of them, right? There's going to be one by the priest circle. There's going to be one by the oldest burials of all, and there's also going to be one for some military men that died during the wars. Right now, notice all the names are Polish ethnic group names. The cemetery is made in 1926, so almost everything is after that date. And any Polish that was in those 7 communities that died before that date would be buried in the cemetery we just came out of, the St. Brigid Cemetery. So this part of Hadley has 2 Catholic cemeteries, and it's the only part of the 7 communities that have Catholic cemeteries or Catholic churches. So this is the priest section off to the side. All right, many priests are buried here, even priests that never even served any of the Catholic churches of Hadley or Amherst are buried here because it's such a nice place. All right, so we'll drive a little bit more around this section, and you can see it in this part. There's hardly anyone buried back here, but they will be. This cemetery is going to turn 100 years old in 2 years. This is year 2024. It's going to turn 100 years old in a couple of years, and I would say it has another 100 years worth of burials that it could keep going and going. And we'll drive to one more section. And if you like this introduction, please make sure that you go and see my other stops that take place when we're on the ground of the cemetery. Now this cemetery was served by St. Brigid's for some of the Polish, but mostly by the Polish church, St. Holy Rosary, that started in Hadley. Okay, and this is the absolute most modern section way back here. And notice how young the cemetery is compared to the St. Brigid Cemetery. Very few old burials, and that's because a lot of the Polish families already bought deeds to plots within St. Brigid's, and they kept using them. That's why there's Polish after 1926 in St. Brigid's, and that's why this cemetery didn't really get going until the 1950s through 1980s, right? Because a lot of people had deeds already. You can actually figure out what a cemetery is like just by looking around. And the oldest burials at all are right in front of us, and that's going to be one of our stops. Okay, so thank you for this drive-through.